A telecommunications company is the only business where customers pay you every single month for a service they barely understand. And the richer you get, the more you have to spend just to stay exactly where you are. You would think owning the pipes that connect the entire world is a guaranteed license to print money. 5 billion people paying $30 to $100 a month for something they cannot live without. But here is the strange part. Despite collecting over $2 trillion in global revenue every year, the average telecom company makes a lower profit margin than a neighborhood coffee shop. And the biggest players, AT&T, Verizon, Deutsche Telekom, spend more money every year just maintaining what they already built than most Fortune 500 companies spend on everything combined. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how a telecom business actually makes money, where every dollar disappears, why the spectrum auction model is the most expensive game of poker on earth, and the one hidden cost that makes owning a telecom company completely different from any other infrastructure business. 3 tiers of telecom ownership determine the entire game. Level 1, the Mobile Virtual Network Operator, an MVNO like Mint Mobile or Cricket Wireless. You do not own a single tower, you do not own any spectrum. You buy network access wholesale from the big carriers at a discount and resell it under your own brand. Your investment is marketing and customer service, and your biggest risk is that your wholesale supplier becomes your competitor tomorrow. Level 2, the Regional Carrier. You own towers, you own spectrum licenses, and you serve a specific geographic area, like a single state or a cluster of cities. Think US Cellular or T-Mobile before the merger spree. You control your infrastructure, but you cannot match the pricing power of the national giants. Level 3, the National Tier 1 Carrier. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, China Mobile. You own spectrum across the entire country. You own tens of thousands of towers, millions of miles of fiber, and you serve over 100 million subscribers each. Your cost to enter is not millions, it is not hundreds of millions, it is tens of billions of dollars before you connect a single phone call. Same industry, same product, completely different universe of economics. A telecom company makes money through exactly 3 channels. First, consumer subscriptions. The $60 monthly plan you pay for your phone. This is the core product, but it is also the most competitive. In the United States, the average revenue per user has dropped from $50 in 2015 to about $42 today, because carriers keep cutting prices to steal each other's customers. Second, business and enterprise services. A small business pays $200 a month for a fiber connection. A large enterprise can spend $50,000 a month on a dedicated network link. Governments sign multi-year contracts worth hundreds of millions. B2B now accounts for 30 to 40% of total revenue at the major carriers, and it is growing faster than the consumer side. Third, wholesale and infrastructure leasing. Smaller carriers pay the giants to use their towers. MVNOs pay wholesale rates for access. Tower companies like American Tower lease space to multiple carriers on a single structure, collecting rent from Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, all from the same concrete and steel. A single cell tower with 3 tenants generates over $150,000 per year in lease revenue. The same tower, the same concrete, 3 times the revenue. Now watch where the money bleeds out. Network infrastructure eats 22 to 25% of revenue in capital expenditure alone, the highest ratio of any major industry. A single 5G macro tower costs $250,000 to build. A mile of fiber optic cable costs $40,000 to $60,000 for aerial installation, and up to $185,000 if you have to dig underground. There are over 400 submarine cables crossing the world's oceans, each one costing between $300 million and $500 million to lay. And none of this lasts forever. Spectrum licenses expire after 10 to 15 years. At the last FCC C-band auction in 2021, carriers spent $81 billion on radio frequencies they did not own, just the right to use them for a limited time. That is $81 billion paid to the government before a single tower goes up. The equipment on those towers needs replacement every 5 to 7 years as technology moves from 4G to 5G to the coming 6G. You are rebuilding your entire infrastructure every decade, whether you want to or not. No other industry requires you to reinvest at this scale just to stand still. Spectrum is the most expensive asset you will never see. Radio frequencies are a finite resource. The government controls every hertz of it, and they auction it to the highest bidder. In the United States, cumulative spectrum auction revenue since 1994 has exceeded $200 billion. The 2021 C-band auction alone raised $81 billion from Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Verizon spent over $45 billion on that single auction. The trap works like this. You buy the spectrum, you build the network to use it, and 15 years later, you have to do it all over again because the license expires. Meanwhile, the technology you built for that spectrum is already obsolete because the next generation of wireless has arrived and your competitors are already deploying it. And the government knows exactly how much you need that spectrum. They know your entire business model depends on it. So the price keeps climbing, and you have no choice but to pay. Once the network is built, it does not run itself. The operating expenses of a telecom company are staggering. AT&T alone spends over $100 billion per year on operating costs. Field technicians climb towers in every weather condition to repair equipment. Network operations centers run 24/7 monitoring for outages. Customer service departments employ tens of thousands of people handling billing disputes and technical support. And then there is the fraud problem. SIM swap attacks, robocalls, identity theft. Telecom companies spend billions annually just securing their own network from criminals. A single data breach at a telecom company can cost $500 million in fines, lawsuits, and remediation. The cost of keeping the lights on never stops, and it never gets cheaper. Nobody talks about the regulatory burden. Telecom is the most regulated industry in the developed world. Net neutrality rules dictate what you can and cannot do with your own network. Data privacy regulations like GDPR in Europe and state-level laws in the US force you to document every piece of customer data you touch. Universal service obligations require you to build infrastructure in unprofitable rural areas, regardless of the economics. Local zoning laws mean you cannot put a tower where it makes financial sense. You put it where the town approves it, which is usually the most expensive and least optimal location. In Europe, regulators have actively forced prices down, squeezing margins even further. The regulatory environment changes with every election cycle, and each change requires millions in legal and compliance costs to navigate. You are running a business where a single court ruling can eliminate a billion-dollar revenue stream overnight. The subscription model is the only reason telecom companies can survive the capital intensity. Run the math. The average American pays about $50 per month for their phone plan. That is $600 per year. With 200 million mobile subscribers in the US alone, that is a $120 billion annual revenue pool before you sell a single business contract or roam a single customer internationally. But there is a catch. The average cost to acquire a new subscriber is between $300 and $600. That means you do not make money on a new customer for 6 to 12 months. You are losing money on every new sign-up for the first year. The profit comes from retention. A customer who stays for 3 years generates about $1,800 in revenue at a $500 acquisition cost, giving you about $1,300 in gross profit over the life of the customer. The entire business model depends on keeping churn below 1.5% per month. Above that threshold, the math falls apart, and every new subscriber you add makes you less profitable, not more. One structural problem keeps getting worse. Over-the-top services, WhatsApp, FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, have destroyed the two most profitable products telecom companies ever had. In 2010, text messaging was a $100 billion global industry. Carriers charged 10 to 20 cents per message. Today, most people send text messages through WhatsApp or iMessage for free. International calling used to be a massive profit center. A 10-minute call from the United States to India could cost $20. Now you make that call on WhatsApp for $0 in marginal cost. The carriers fought this battle and lost completely. Voice and SMS have been commoditized to zero, and there is no way to bring them back. The carriers now compete on data plans alone, which means they are selling a commodity where the only differentiator is price and coverage. And they spent $81 billion on spectrum to sell a product customers are increasingly unwilling to pay more for. 5G was supposed to be the savior of the telecom industry. Faster speeds, lower latency, autonomous driving, smart cities, the metaverse, every consultant in the industry promised a new wave of revenue that would justify the investment. U.S. carriers alone have spent over $100 billion on 5G spectrum and infrastructure. AT&T has invested over $140 billion in total network infrastructure. The result? Consumers are paying roughly the same as they did for 4G. The killer app for 5G was supposed to be fixed wireless access, using 5G to replace home broadband. T-Mobile has added over 5 million fixed wireless subscribers, which is real growth, but it comes at a fraction of the revenue per user that traditional broadband commands. The carriers spent billions to build a faster pipe, and customers are using it to watch the same Netflix shows they watched on 4G. The 5G investment trap is the single biggest financial risk in the industry today. American Tower Corporation is the most profitable telecom company you have never heard of. They sell no phone plans and run no retail stores. American Tower owns 225,000 communication towers across 25 countries. They lease space on those towers to Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and every other carrier. Each tower generates $40,000 to $80,000 per year per tenant. With an average of 3 tenants per tower, that is over $150,000 per tower per year. The towers last for decades with minimal maintenance. American Tower's EBITDA margin, the operating profit before interest and taxes, is 66%. By comparison, Verizon operates at a 14% margin. American Tower's market capitalization is over $100 billion. They are worth more than most of the carriers who rent space on their towers. The tower company model proves the fundamental truth of telecom infrastructure. Owning the concrete underneath the network is far more profitable than running the network itself. Now imagine trying to start a telecom company from scratch today. You need spectrum, minimum $2 billion for a usable national license. You need towers, at least 10,000 to have meaningful coverage, at $300,000 each. That is $3 billion in hardware alone. You need fiber to connect those towers, another $2 billion. You need network equipment, billing systems, customer service infrastructure, retail stores, another $3 billion. Your minimum viable telecom company costs $10 billion before you sign your first customer. And by the time you finish building, the established carriers have already matched your coverage and undercut your pricing because their network is already fully depreciated. The barriers to entry are so high that in the United States, only 4 national carriers have been built in the entire history of the industry. In most countries, the market is dominated by 2 or 3 players who have been operating for decades. You are not competing with a company. You are competing with 50 years of compounded infrastructure investment. Let us run 3 scenarios. Conservative. A small regional MVNO leasing network access from a major carrier. You sign up 50,000 subscribers at $30 per month. After wholesale costs, marketing, and overhead, you clear about $2 million per year. Your entire business depends on a contract that the carrier can rewrite in 18 months. Moderate. a mid-tier carrier with real infrastructure. You own spectrum in a specific region, you own your towers, and you have 2 million subscribers at $45 per month average. After network costs, spectrum amortization, and operating expenses, you clear $40 million per year. You are profitable, but the parent carrier in the next state over is preparing to undercut your pricing with a national roaming subsidy you cannot match. Aggressive, a national Tier 1 carrier with nationwide spectrum, 50,000 towers, and 100 million subscribers. You clear $4 billion per year. But you also spend $3 billion on network upgrades and another billion on spectrum every license cycle. Your free cash flow is barely $1 billion on $20 billion in revenue. The bigger you get, the more the business owns you. The paradox that defines the telecommunications business is this. It is simultaneously the backbone of modern civilization and the worst business model ever invented. Every person on the planet needs what you sell. The entire global economy depends on your network staying operational. Governments, banks, hospitals, schools, none of them function without you. And yet the profit margin on all of that responsibility is thinner than a neighborhood laundromat. The companies that win in telecom are not the ones with the best technology or the most subscribers. They are the ones that figured out how to own the physical infrastructure without operating the service. Tower companies collecting rent from every carrier equally. Or the ones with government-protected home markets where competition is limited and regulators are friendly. Or the ones smart enough to realize that the real money in connectivity is not in selling it, but in selling the right to use it. The next time you open your phone and see 5 bars in the corner, remember, you are looking at the result of hundreds of billions of dollars in investment, decades of regulatory battles, and one of the most capital-intensive businesses in human history. And somehow, the company that put that signal in your hand is making less profit than the coffee shop on the ground floor of their own office building. That is the real economics of a telecommunications business, and that is exactly how fast your money bleeds. If you want us to break down the economics of owning a specific business, drop it in the comments. We read everything. Subscribe so the next one shows up in your feed. This is the Cash Bleed, calculating exactly how fast your money drains.